Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the next episode of the Mint Mob podcast. Jason here, joined by my buddy Alex across the pond in Germany. We're going to jump into some market stuff and what's going on with the Goodfellas project, of course. And then, of course, free flow and riff like we always do. So sit back and relax and join the conversation. Alex, how you doing, buddy?
Hey man, I'm doing great. Always happy to be here on the podcast every Monday. And yeah, you said it. Let's dive a little bit into the markets. We've seen a lot of movement lately. The markets seem like they do not really know where to go. There has been a lot of attention on a post someone made, or actually a trade someone made. A guy who made a pretty big short position of. I think I just read a post a couple minutes ago that it's even worth 500 million right now, and his liquidation price is like 85,500 or something like this. So he's pretty close. He's not in profit. I think he's like 1 million down, and it's crazy because you saw how people got scared just because of that trade, and people were like expecting, okay, he now something Bitcoin is going to go down. There will be bad news. I bet there are a lot of people who sold their positions or went short as well. You're not a big fan of trading, but do you think psychology wise it's a good thing to monitor all that kind of stuff?
Not really. I mean, at the end of the day, I think you should focus on your strategy, whatever that is. If it's trading, then focus on that. If it's not, then don't, And I don't know. There's so much crowd following, like people following each other. And I mean, like following each other into a trade or out of a trade and the truth is like, you never know what someone's actually doing, what they're actually getting or gaining because you don't know the whole story. And so a lot of this public stuff, I tend to just gloss over because, like this guy that you're talking about right now with the short position, you said something like he's betting on Bitcoin 58, I think, right? And he's like $500 from being liquidated right now. I mean, like he might be right, and if he's got that type of money to burn, then, kudos to him on taking the risk, and I hope he wins, honestly, because if he wins, it's better for everybody. But the truth is, like, we don't know the other half of his portfolio. He might be covering that potential loss with something else in a different market. And so, for him, it might be a wash depending on what happens with both trades, So like, you can't look at one side of the trade or look at, someone's one win or one loss and assume that that's, their entire portfolio. It just doesn't work that way. So for me personally, I don't get too sucked into the stuff. It's interesting. It's a cool story. It's like, cool story, bro. But like at the end of the day, just, focus on what you're doing and go from there,
Absolutely. I feel like sometimes when I introduce people to crypto, I'm not an advisor, obviously, but when I tell people to get Bitcoin or something, I always tell them like, get your spot holdings and then close the charts for at least a couple of months. Because in the end, if you look at X and you see all these people going crazy, if Bitcoin dumps, I don't know, $2,000 in like a couple of hours, and they're like, who's dumping Bitcoin right now? Why is it going down? Blah, blah, blah. They get all emotional and, it recovers overnight. All these emotions have been like for nothing. So I feel like in the end, it's always best to, as you said, follow your strategy. I probably would try not to look at the charts at all for weeks. But I know, obviously, we do talk a lot about the markets every week, actually, so I have to follow. But in the end, I feel like crypto markets are so volatile. So if you decide to invest and you're convinced, just buy it and close the charts and enjoy life, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got to have a good philosophy on life in general, but specifically when you're dealing with money. I mean, because money's a game, and sometimes you lose, as I can attest, and sometimes you win, as I can attest, right? Like it's just one of those things. But you need to have a philosophy and a good outlook. I think everyone who is in the markets, especially to make money, should read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Are you familiar with this book?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember talking to a guy who's usually investing in stock markets, and he was like, "Oh man, this week my whole portfolio crashed," and he was like 5% down. And us crypto guys hearing stuff like that, we feel like 5 days down seems like a good day actually. So if we look at that kind of stuff, and if you see people from the stock markets entering crypto markets, I guess a lot of people who invested into the ETFs are probably from stock markets. And if these guys see, you know, Bitcoin go down like 10% a day, they might panic. And I mean, we've seen a lot of outflows from the ETFs lately. Yeah, not sure. Like, do you think ETFs will be beneficial for crypto at all, like in the future, in the long term?
Yeah, for sure. They definitely will be. I mean, if for no other reason, they're just good marketing for the public sector, or I should say the normies. They're just good marketing for people who don't really care to get in, you know, too involved. And it's an easy way for them to get involved if they already have some sort of traditional stock, you know, stock account or what have you. But yeah, I don't think you heard one of the questions I asked. I was like asking you, I was talking about having philosophy around what is it you do, and I asked you if you read the book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Did you hear that part?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Oh.
Sorry, no, I didn't read it, but I think I should. It seems like a recommendation from you.
Well, the moment has passed, but yeah, it was just, you were talking about people getting all emotional, and it's kind of funny because I was reading Meditations this morning, and in the very first chapter, Marcus Aurelius, who was, you know, a Roman emperor, he's basically acknowledging all the people who helped shape him, and he does a whole chapter on, you know, from this person I learned this, from this person I learned that, you know. And one of the things that he says in the book, he says from Apollonius, he learned moral freedom, the certainty to ignore the dice of fortune and to have no other perspective, even for a moment, than that of reason alone, and to always be the same man, unchanged in sudden pain, in the loss of a child, in lingering sickness, to see clearly in his living example that a man can combine intensity and relaxation, to not be impatient in explanation, the observance of a man who clearly regarded as the least of his gifts his experience and skill in communicating his philosophical insights, the lesson of how to take apparent favors from one's friends, neither compromised by them nor insensitive in their rejection. And he's basically just saying, like, no matter what happens, like, you got to be, you know, you have to be grounded in something. Like, you know, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, you're going to have good people, you're going to have bad days or bad people, you're going to have good fortune, you're going to have bad fortune. But at the end of the day, you still have to be who you are, you know, and you have to be effective in that. So be reasonable, be rational. And I think that's the part that's missing in the crypto world right now. People have thrown, you know, people throw all reason out the window when they get scared or terrified. When the truth is, like, you know, if you're betting that big, you've bet too big. You know, you should be able to control your emotions when you're doing this stuff. And kind of to your point, that's what's missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you mention it, because I had that discussion with a guy, and, you know, we talked about all that stuff and about literature out there that you can read. And you mentioned Marcus Aurelius, and he was like, why would I listen to guys who lived centuries ago? You know, why, like, markets have changed, the world has changed. Why would I take advices from those guys? And I was just telling him, like, that's true, but psychology hasn't changed.
That's right.
And there's still a lot of stuff you can learn from those guys. And
there's,
you know, I feel like,
there's no new knowledge. That's
yeah.
the thing, right? Like there's no new knowledge
Absolutely.
when it comes to how humans interact. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I was actually done. Like, I agree. And I feel like even though they've lived in the past, you know, people and, you know, like how they behaved was still kind of similar. And yeah, I'm not sure if you can translate all that to the crypto markets, because crypto is actually a thing that, like, I'm not sure if you ever had a market of that size being that volatile. I doubt that, because obviously we only had stock markets so far. I'm not even sure, like, if you look at GME or if you look at Nvidia or if you look at Tesla right now, you see it's actually behaving like a cryptocurrency. If you look at the 80s, 90s, did we have cryptocurrency stocks moving like that?
In the 80s and 90s, not real. Well, we had shocks, we had ups and downs. I mean, that's well before my time of investing. I didn't really start investing until the 2000s, but Like I remember when I was, like talking to my parents, like they talked about the 70s and how shitty the 70s were. And then they talked about how, crazy the 80s were. It's like everybody was coming out of a sort of like a long sleep almost. And interest rates were crazy high, but businesses were doing better. The markets were doing better. People were having fun. You had that whole bright colored neon 80s thing happening that carried over into the 90s. We had a crash at the late 80s, and we had war in the early 90s. Then we had the dot-com bubble that sort of popped or started to pop in like 99. We had the 2000 scare. So, I mean, there's always something, like I don't know if it's as volatile then or today or I don't know if it was as volatile then as it is today, because the trading tools are so much faster today. And information is so much faster. So like if you think about how information was disseminated, 3 or 4 or 5 decades ago, you had to wait for a newspaper or the nightly news or some special broadcast or some radio address. It wasn't like you were on the internet getting this information instantaneously from 5 different sources, and then you couldn't log into your phone and then make a quick trade. You had to call somebody. So it's totally different. And today, like if you get a wild hair up your ass that something's going to happen, it's just, I'll pop my phone open and I'll start trading, or I'll start buying or I'll start selling or whatever the thing is. So I think volatility just comes with like the speed of information, more so than anything. And probably back then, if people had access to those tools, they would have traded faster and created more volatility. It just wasn't available to them.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, it feels kind of unimaginable to me, thinking about the past when people relied on newspapers. Actually, I even read that back then when you wanted to get information, even when you wanted to buy like a car or something, you needed to wait for newspapers in order to get all these offers. And yeah, time has changed with the internet, obviously. But yeah, let's take a look what lies ahead for crypto this week. We got a pretty big FOMC meeting on Thursday, I think, or on Wednesday. It's actually on Wednesday, the day after tomorrow. Interest rates are in the focus, so people are hoping for them to go down. Obviously, the chances are pretty low. I think somewhere at like 2 or 3%. What's also interesting is always what Powell says at the press conference after. What do you expect?
I think overall there's going to be a trend for interest rates to stay the same or basically go down a little bit by little bit by little bit. And that just because, when interest rates are lower, cash tends to flow much, much faster into businesses and investments. It's easier to borrow money generally. And, with home prices being what they are in the US, I mean, like that, I think people are paying, I can't remember the average home price is, but I remember when we moved to Anthem, we bought a house for like 200 grand, and then turned it into a rental property and bought another house. And that property is now valued at like 450,000. And that was just 7 years ago, so like in 7 years, it's more than doubled in price. And at that same time, we had low interest rates initially, but now interest rates have gone up. So usually when interest rates go up, home prices go down. They're kind of inversely proportional. But because there's so much inflation in the system, I don't see that happening. So interest rates have gone up and home prices have stayed basically flat, maybe slightly trending back up. They trended down for a while and now they're kind of flat and trending back up. So at least in this area, I mean, obviously real estate's local, but I think people are looking for lower interest rates to make homes more affordable, like make interest payments or like home payments more affordable, like borrowing more money more affordable, because so many people in the U.S. are in tremendous debt right now from all the COVID nonsense and all the rest of it. I think credit card debt is at all-time highs. I know at one point Trump was floating the idea that he was going to cap credit card interest rates at something like 10%, because, they can charge up to like 30% or whatever. So, all of this sort of uncertainty around inflation expectations, as well as, what's already in the system, it's crazy. The price levels today relative to just what they were a few years ago, like before COVID. So like inflation is definitely in the system, and having money easier to access for people who are in debt gives them the ability to refinance, gives them the ability to, buy a house, because like when you're buying a house, you're not really buying a house, you're just buying a payment. And if interest rates are lower, payments are lower generally. So it's tough, because if interest rates come down and it drives home prices up, just because money is easier to get, then that creates a bigger gap in people trying to get on the property ladder. It makes it better for businesses who need to borrow money to create, inventories, or to buy inventories, or to finance their inventories or their equipment. So, I mean, it's kind of a catch-22. But I think ultimately the government that we have now wants to see money flowing more freely. So that's why I say the trend is probably going to be flat to down. And I don't know if it's going to go down much from here, but flat to down is what I'm seeing, just based on the fact that flat to down is going to be what's beneficial to the average person and the small businesses around the world, or at least in the US, that, need to borrow money or live on some sort of credit to survive, period to period between sales. So, I don't know exactly what that means long term, but if interest rates are lowered, it generally points toward more liquidity, and more liquidity generally points toward more money going into risk assets, which could drive, all risk assets up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, flat to down is what I'm expecting.
But man, listening to these numbers, I feel like you should have flipped properties back then. But do you have the impression that prices are on like home properties are still going up right now?
Well, real estate's local, so I mean it's kind of a difficult thing to say. What I'm sensing, based on the people that I talk to and the few markets that I do look at, is that prices are more or less flat right now. But of course, if business in your particular area picks up, for example, we have TSMC, which is, I think, Taiwan Semiconductor Corporation, who's building this massive plant factory, maybe 6 or 7 miles down the road from where we are. And they're going to employ, 100,000 people or more before it's all said and done, maybe even more than that. I can't remember the exact number. But they just brought their production facility online recently, and only half of the facility is built. So that's going to draw in, who knows how many more thousands of people, plus their kids, plus their relatives, if they've got them, into the area. And they're all going to want housing. So if you've got like businesses in the area that are growing, that's always a bullish sign for housing, because there's more competition for the same number of houses, generally speaking. So, I mean, for us, I think the real estate market where I am at is going to continue to like hold steady or rise slightly. And, nationally, if businesses in general tend and trend toward better production, less debt, if they can, if they're not holding a lot of debt and they can actually, pay their bills and pay their people, that's generally a good sign for real estate as well. So, I mean, it's that whole idea that, retail follows rooftops. And so, if there's a lot of people coming into an area, businesses generally go in there. And if the businesses do well, that draws more people in there to work. And then, of course, that creates more demand for housing, et cetera, et cetera. So nationally, I don't know. Locally, for sure. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at the interest rates, I mean, obviously we're expecting them to go down over the next few months. People are kind of like in fear, because they feel like if they don't get cut down pretty quick, because there are obviously claims out there that Trump wants them to go down, and people expect him to, crash, dump the markets even more. Because like expecting new tariffs and stuff like that. Do you see that as some sort of threat for the crypto markets in short term?
I mean, anything is a threat short term. Like we've got this, someone leaked an email, and assuming it's valid, that people at USAID were basically told to burn documents and destroy documents. I mean, that's not a bullish sign for any market, because it creates uncertainty, right? So, I mean, in the short run, literally anything can be an impetus to drive the market down or up, anything, literally anything. And you don't know where that's going to come from. So, I mean, short-term view for me is pretty unimportant. I don't really care. It's just a buying opportunity if you believe in the long-term story. And the long-term story hasn't changed, and that's the one that I'm more focused on. So I'm probably not the greatest person to ask about short-term outcomes, because I think that thinking short-term is probably the biggest problem that we face in in pretty much all of the markets for sure, but in life in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, dude, I need I need your opinion, man. I always do what you say. So please tell me what you expect in short term. But yeah, like you mentioned the USAID. Do you? I mean, it's going back into conspiracies here, but do you think Elon's life is at risk because like some big players want to get rid of him?
I think anytime you threaten the establishment, your life is at risk. And it's kind of funny that people think this is funny, but when people just disappear for no apparent reason, or people have these, sort of like suicides that are impossible, where like, some guy shoots himself in the face with a rifle and the rifle is longer than his arm. So how did he pull the trigger, kind of a thing? Or, Epstein is found dead in a cell, that was supposedly watched by, security cameras, but the security cameras suddenly happened to be off during that moment. I mean, like, all of this stuff is real, man. Like, there's, it's not a conspiracy. It's just people not really, thinking too deeply about it. And it's kind of funny because it sounds completely outrageous, like something out of a Hollywood, script or movie. But these things are very real. These threats are very real. These people have security for a reason. It's not imagined. Trump's been shot at, or had an attempt on his life twice now, I think, or maybe 3 times, I forget. And, the media didn't really say much about it. Elon's got a security team as well. All of the politicians, the major players in Washington, all have security teams. So, I mean, these threats are real. And, I don't think the one that Elon's facing is any less real, especially if, what they're finding at USAID is so detrimental that it's causing the administrators to tell employees there to burn documents. Anytime it gets to that point, pretty much anyone involved is kind of at that place where it's like, okay, there's some real threats that could potentially be unfolded here, and we should probably pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I recently listened to a podcast episode about China, and the question was why so many Chinese billionaires suddenly disappear after criticizing the government. And it was even about Jack Ma as well, because he criticized the government as well, and was kind of gone for a couple of weeks and disappeared. Yep. Nobody heard from him. I think he's back by now, but I mean, it's crazy because if you think about that kind of stuff and you feel like, okay, that's China, or okay, that's Russia, but we are here in the Western world, democracy, stuff like that, and you feel like it's different here. And then you see all the corruption going on in the United States or in Europe, and you realize it's not that different actually, and that's horrible, actually, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the whole Jack Ma thing was kind of funny too, but it kind of points to that idea, right? Like, if you're not careful and you threaten the wrong people, you can never forget, like, no matter what country you live in, like, listen, like, even in the US where, many people own guns here, like, even the US government has way more guns and power than you could possibly imagine. And if they decide to come after you, they're going to come after you and they're going to win, like, and unless you have some sort of mass or organized uprising, which is highly unlikely, and, people coming to your aid, which is highly unlikely, it's you versus a whole bunch of other people with guns. Like, they're going to take you or they're going to take your life. And so when you see people taken like Jack Ma, or, like Russian politicians, for example, or, people here in the US who've had good ideas who were suddenly disappeared, or who had information who were suddenly disappeared. I mean, there's something to that. And I'm not saying that conspiracy theories around people disappearing are real. What I'm saying is there is something to that, because you're threatening a regime or you're threatening someone powerful, and they're not going to sit by and allow that to happen. So whatever's underneath that exists. And, if I'm Elon, I'm going to be very careful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the end, you see all that kind of stuff often in like movies and films, where you see like the government doing shady stuff, and you know you see that at least to some point it's actually the truth. And yeah, but I mean, there's obviously not much we can do against it. But yeah, we'll see where it goes. Let's maybe change the topic. I'm scared I'll get kidnapped tomorrow. Um, let's get back to the crypto markets. So what I read is, let me see if I can find the headline. Um, um, yeah, what was interesting is actually that Russia, China, and the whole BRICS countries are starting to use Bitcoin, ETH, and stablecoins for oil trade, to bypass sanctions. It's actually good for the crypto markets. Obviously, adoption continues, yay!
Mm-hmm.
But do you think that kind of stuff will like be implemented in the future for like every government using cryptocurrencies for their trades?
Well, I mean, they already are, really. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, no one really, no one really trades in dollars. I mean, they may hold dollars in some central bank somewhere, but I mean, these are trades that are settled months or even years after the fact, right? So basically, all that's happening is, if you have a trade deal with a country, you have an agreement to pay them, or to purchase from them, or they from you, at some future date. Some transaction's going to happen, but in the meantime, it's just a ledger entry on a balance sheet somewhere that's tracking both of those debits and credits. And at some point in the future, it's settled up. So I mean, they're really already going around it in a lot of ways, because you have to realize, like, most of the quote unquote wealth that we call, I think someone said, like, there's like $100 trillion worth of assets in the world or something like that. I mean, there's not $100 trillion in any currency that exists on the planet. So there's not enough currency to cover, the amount of valuations, or to the level of valuations that we have of real things. So on some level, all of this stuff is just transpiring on a book or on a computer system somewhere. So, I mean, technically they're kind of already doing it that way. This is just one step in making it easier to track by, having like some token or some, crypto valuation traded rather than some book entry assigned. So yeah, I mean, for sure, I think the world trends toward easier and better, right? Like, if it's easier and better to transact on a blockchain or a crypto platform, then that's what you'll do. And assuming that value can't be perverted or stolen, then that's what you'll do. And just easier and better. Like, this, for the same reason we don't ship gold across the Atlantic Ocean anymore. Like, the gold sits somewhere, and we claim to have some valuation of it, and we base dollars on it, or at least we used to. But we don't trade in gold anymore. We use dollars or debt and paper. That's it.
Is it actually, like, when you talk about gold, is it actually a thing that is doable, that because it's always like the discussion that if the United States want to acquire Bitcoins, that needs to be, I think they say, budget neutral. Do you think it's a possibility to sell gold and buy Bitcoin for the United States?
I doubt very seriously that at this point in our history that the U.S. would sell gold to purchase Bitcoin. I think right now central banks are still acquiring gold, and as long as that is the case, there will be some sort of perceived or promoted value for the shiny metal, and you would be a fool to, if you're a country and you were holding massive quantities, you would be a fool to liquidate your gold. So no, I don't think that the U.S. is going to do anything like that. In fact, I think if anything, the U.S. would probably prefer to acquire more gold and acquire more Bitcoin at the same time without losing either or trading one for the other.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. Yeah, let's jump a little bit into the NFT markets. And I had another great conversation with a customer. We got into talks like, "Hey, what do you do when you're not here at work?" And I started talking a little bit about NFTs, and usually the perception of people who are not in crypto or NFTs at all, they think they are like, do they still exist? And I told him like, yeah, they're like, it's obviously not the hype we had in 21, but there are still millions in volume in NFTs. And after that, I checked the markets, and what I realized was that I saw that the top 10 of NFTs on Solana are still the same projects, um, like for probably like the past few, even almost like for the past year. So it hasn't changed. Do you feel like there is a chance for new projects right now in the current market conditions to actually create a project that is as successful as the big ones right now?
Yeah, I mean, right now the potential is there for anyone who's committed to a long range plan to do very, very well. Because you have to realize, like, money is always going to flow toward value, whatever that happens to be. And so right now, the value and the value proposition in the marketplace has shifted, and no one has really decided what it's going to be yet, right? Like, remember when we burst on the scene and we took over this project, and I was saying, the highest and best use of crypto or cryptography is tracking, right? It's IP rights, it's ownership. And so everything that we've done has been based off of that. And so that is the value proposition. Like if you buy a Goodfellas NFT, you own the IP. Obviously with certain stipulations, we don't want you doing anything negative to destroy the brand, but you own the IP and you own the rights to that. And so when you look at basically what most of these projects were doing, there were only two things. One, the projects were either creating some form of utility in their mind, whether it was a game or some sort of program or some sort of software, or they were doing something, maybe real world related where they were trying to raise money. And I guess really third would be just ripping people off, which was probably 90% of it, because no one really had the wherewithal or the resources or the vision to actually do something long range. So now I think the value position will shift because people who've been into this, into the scene for so long are basically becoming disillusioned and tired, and they start to fall away. And as they fall away, those ideas of what NFTs should be fall away with them, which means that creators who want to sell something have to come in with new ideas. And so, for us, like the idea of doing real world asset tokenization, of really, being stringent with IP rights, with making sure that our people actually own the work and creating a good solid foundation. Like all of these things are going to come back in vogue eventually because no one is going to want to get ripped off ever. It'll get to the point where, getting ripped off is the exception rather than the rule, or having some sort of failed nonsense project that you bought into because of hype is the exception rather than the rule. You're going to want to see some sort of motion, some sort of plan, some sort of movement. And I think that that's a good thing because it drives the stupid out of the market. And the more stupid we could get out of the market, the better it is for everyone. So I think ultimately you have an opportunity to do that, but obviously you have to be in front of the trend and you have to wait for the market to shift. And right now the market is shifting. The only question is who's going to be in front of it when it shifts in the direction of quality.
Yeah, but I mean, we had that conversation already. If we wanted the NFT market to be like it was in 2021, or if we want to have it different, because I feel like, in all honesty, I feel like we should rather try to disconnect the perception of NFTs, like to try to disconnect it from being some sort of investment and risk asset to actually make it a collector's market,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you and I, we've always been trying to find the right people, to find collectors, to address them, to get them into the project, instead of getting people just to buy it in order to get like a financial benefit from it. Like, hey, let the floor price go up and then I sell again. So do you feel it's a possibility? Do you feel like it's a possibility that we see this happening in the future, that we see like a collector's market in the NFT space, or do you think it's like just a utopia?
No, I mean, I think the collector's market has always been there, and it's going to continue to evolve and grow. And I think what we're doing is we're talking to collectors specifically. I don't know that other collections are doing that just yet, but I feel like the more the market matures and the more people who in the real world collect, whatever it is that they collect, comics, artwork, whatever, I don't really care what it is, that behavior will continue in Web3. And so the question is, who's going to do a good job of providing that value? And so, as far as Goodfellas goes, that's where we're at. We're doing our level best to create artful experiences and quality work across all points of interaction. And so like things like Discord for collectors is basically useless. I mean, Discord was designed for other purposes, to be honest with you. So like connecting with people in groups of like-minded individuals who want to collect is kind of like the next level. So like what that's going to look like and what it's going to shape like, is anyone's guess at this point. But I don't see it taking place on Discord. I don't see it taking place in this existing market. I see the market shifting to that and away from what it currently is. And I see a few upper echelon, like coding-based projects developing and lots of really cool collectibles projects developing, because that's the only way you're going to be able to survive. Like the mediocre artwork, the sort of, back of the napkin type artwork that people have been throwing up at the wall just to see what would stick, that's not going to be good enough. And so you're going to have to be really good, either at creating art or experiences or both, or creating art and code or both. And, my vision has always been the same. It's to create artful experiences across all of those bits of interaction. And if we can do that, we'll always have a certain number of collectors and hopefully draw in that many more as they come into the market and the market opens up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually one thing I wondered about when I looked at the top collections on Solana. I mean, obviously we got MATLABs at the top. I mean, they attempted to do a lot of stuff in the very beginning. They got a successful Chrome wallet extension. But then we have like, I don't know, Frogana, whatever they do. We got the D-Gods, whose founder is trading meme coins. And we got the Foxes, who got some pretty cool tools. But like I haven't seen a lot of them lately, especially in terms of development. And I have not seen anything at all in terms of building something for collectors and focusing art. And I feel like Stargaze has done a lot better job on that. So I feel like we're kind of at the forefront for Solana, and hope to see us in the top 10 next year.
Oh, definitely. I mean, these are long-term games that we're playing. And so the whole thing is like learning to play long-term games with long-term people. I say this a lot, but people just still don't get it. And the marketplace, the NFT marketplace is very, very catty and sort of, tribal. So like the Stargaze people tend to only be on Stargaze for the most part, which is kind of weird because the whole idea behind Cosmos was to, bring a bunch of different things together. And it's the same on Solana and ETH and all the rest of it. Like as much as we talk multi-chain, people have their favorite that they go to and they stay there and they hang out there. And that's cool. But if you want to play a bigger game, then you have to be open to doing different things that aren't necessarily being embraced by your particular community. So, Stargaze, has some changes on their on their docket, I should say. I don't know if I'm at liberty to announce what those are yet, but, Stargaze has got some changes that they're planning to make that will shake up what's happening on Stargaze, and, it'll be interesting to see how those people respond. Solana continues to invest in code and, like real world business use cases and collectibles and that sort of thing. And it's much faster than ETH, and they're doing a really good job of promo, and they're getting a lot of big name people involved. Most recently I was just like tweeting back and forth with Ghostface Killer because he kept posting about Solana. And I thought that was kind of funny. And so I was posting a bunch of our stuff on his timeline just to kind of get in front of other people and promote. But, like as long as you have people who are, interested in doing artful things, business use cases, and who can promote and grow, with some sort of real funding, then you're going to do really well. And I feel like, if we can get past some of the tribalism that goes on in this market space, then, people who are doing great things on one chain can bring those ideas to another and vice versa. And ultimately what we'll see is like all of the also rans, all the people who are kind of almost there, who kind of almost got it right, all of those people will fall away and you'll be left with the best of the best. And I feel like we're starting that process now. And that might go on for the next 2, maybe 3 years. And I feel like at the end of the day, that's about how much time you've got to figure it out. Like if you want to be a big time player in the NFT market, I think you've got 2 or 3 years to figure it out. And, and form a good solid base and start building out your tech and understanding how your chain works and understanding how to program on your chain and understanding how to provide value in the real world. And after that, I think you're going to have basically programmability coming online straight from AI agents. Like if I want to build something on Solana, I'll just basically fire off a script that, was created by a prompt, to Grok or some AI who can write code like Claude. Claude is really good. It's not 100%, but someday it will be. And you'll be able to start solving problems for people. It won't be about solving code problems or what have you. The AI will do that for you. So you need to have some, value proposition that you're bringing to the world. And what is that? Are you built on collectibles? Are you built on RWA? Are you built on business use cases? Are you selling tickets? What is it that you're doing that's unique? What problem are you solving and how well are you solving it? And the market will tell you who's going to win. I think that's where we're going.
Yeah, it's funny you mention Ghostface Killer, because I saw the interaction you had with him. And for some reason, whenever famous people start showing interest in crypto, I feel like it's just, in preparations of dropping their own meme coin. There was actually that guy who was called Ronaldinho, who's a former Brazilian football star, or for you, soccer star, so you understand. And he also started like this. He was like the first post was like, "Hey, crypto is doing pretty good lately." And then he started to make some crypto posts and ultimately ended up dropping his meme coin, which obviously went to zero. And that's why I'm always a little cautious with celebrities showing interest in crypto. But you can try. Maybe there will be one day who actually is genuinely interested in what we do here. But yeah, we will see. Yeah. Let's dive a little bit. Or do you have a take on that?
Well, the reason I mentioned him specifically is because he's already dropped music on Bitcoin. And so like the meme coin stuff is just a fad that will eventually go away. I think it's going away now. At least I hope it is, because it's a really bad idea for anyone trying to invest. But yeah, he already dropped some stuff on Bitcoin music-wise. And to go from Bitcoin to Solana over all the other options, I think is a big deal. It's kind of telling. And, I'm sure there's people in his camp telling him, hey, this is how ordinals work, and this is how ETH works, and this is how Solana works, and blah, 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 all the way down the line. So why do you land on Solana? Well, I don't know. I don't know who he's got talking to him, but obviously, being that they've already dropped artwork and music on Bitcoin, they've considered other chains. So that tells me that some thought went into, what he's doing with Solana. Whether it's a meme coin or not, it doesn't really matter, because all those meme coins are going to zero.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to some degree, I understand why it's, tempting for some celebrities to do that kind of stuff, especially, soccer players are having they usually not really good with money, so they tend to lose their money, and then they're in need, and they got their followings on social media, and it's always a sure shot. If you drop a meme coin as someone with like a couple million followers, you will always make your money. So in the end, and especially like you do not even have to fear legal consequences right now, because the president did that as well. So I get why it's tempting, because I feel like it's not even hurting your reputation because people forget. There are so many big stars who drop meme coins, and nobody's talking about that anymore. And people are even demanding it. I mean, when I saw Kanye posting all the crypto stuff, and the comments were full of, "Hey, drop the contract, so they can buy in and try to make some money." It's crazy, but I get why people do this. It's obviously giving you some bad karma, but many people see the money and just do it. So yeah, I mean, we see the meme coin hype dying right now. Pump Fund is a pretty good indicator for that. We see the revenue go down every day. So we hope we kind of get rid of it at some point. But yeah, we will see, I guess. Yeah, but let's jump a little bit into the good fellas because we have a lot going on right now. Yeah, why don't you give people a little update on the core NFTs?
Yeah, so just a big heads up on the core NFTs. Remember, this tech is super new. Like it's still not even supported by Magic Eden fully. I was talking about this on the spaces. The tech support side of Magic Eden had to actually help me get the collection properly listed. And this is, of course, when I went and delisted the old 21s. So this past week, I was on with them quite a bit. We got the old 21s collection delisted and the new 21s collection listed. It'll show as a fresh collection. They wouldn't actually let me replace the old pieces with the new. So all of the stats at the top will be fresh. They'll be, like show 0 volume or whatever. So that is the correct collection. And you'll notice that the collection NFT is the same one that I've posted in Discord and on Twitter about 5 times now. All of that is correct for the 21s. We're going to be doing the AI pieces next. And just a quick heads up on staking. When we have pieces that are stakeable, you have to realize on the technical side, in order to make them stakeable, we have to tell the technology which pieces are even a possibility. So there's a list of hashes, which is basically the unique identifier for the NFT. There's a long list of hashes that has to be read into the system so that the system knows, okay, well, I can accept this NFT. None of the core NFTs have been added to the system yet. So if you try to stake them, you're not going to be able to. So the best thing to do right now is just wait for an announcement on staking, because I want to test that before I release it to the wild, given that it's a newer technology, just to make sure we can get pieces in and out without a problem. And, once we test it and everything's fine, then I'll make an announcement saying, hey, go for it. Everything looks pretty good. But for now, if you've tried to stake your core pieces, that's why they won't stake. We haven't even made it available yet. There's no hashes added for the core pieces. So best thing to do is just unstake all your old stuff, sit and wait to the best of your ability. Again, if you've got stuff stuck at floppy, we're going to replace all those pieces anyway. You've already seen that announcement 5 or 6 times from me and Alex put together. And, send your pieces over or send a screenshot of what's stuck in staking and we'll get your new core pieces out. But yeah, just be patient. We're going to get through this and, it'll be better than before, but obviously we've got to get through the tough part first. So that's what's up with that. We've got the RWA project coming up. These pieces will probably go on the market around $50 a piece. They're going to be 21s pieces. And remember with this one, you're not just buying the art. You get the artwork, of course, but you're also getting the underlying asset that it represents. And that will be spelled out in the metadata itself. And we'll also start talking about how you can, benefit from that. And so Alex and I were talking before we got on the mics about bringing in the founders of Planet Amore to a spaces or to a meeting so that you guys can ask questions and, get all of those, really hard questions answered by people who can, give you more information than me. Because obviously I'm a newbie when it comes to renewable resources and carbon markets and all the rest of it. But I see this as a fantastic opportunity and a real use case for, owning something beautiful that's also tied to something practical. And anytime you can do that, I think everybody wins. So that's what's up with that. Obviously no pressure to mint. The mint will stay open until it mints out. Until then, all pieces are owned by the Treasury. Alex and I have already paid the bill. So yeah, that's pretty much what's up with that. And feel free to correct me if I left anything out.
No, I think you covered it pretty good. It's actually crazy to think of the whole core NFT situation because, obviously, I mean, how come companies take so long to implement them correctly into their systems? Because I mean, Magic Eden is obviously an NFT. I can understand that Phantom takes some time because maybe NFTs are not their priority number one.
Hmm.
But I mean, Magic Eden is like the biggest NFT marketplace, and the core standard is obviously the new standard by Metaplex. Most of the NFTs are on Metaplex, so I don't know. Like Magic Eden should be able to do that a little quicker, right? I mean, core NFTs have been around for quite some time now.
I'm sure they can. I think it just comes down to demand, right? Like if you've got a development team and 80% of your NFTs are the old, what do they call them? I forget what they're calling, like metadata. I forget what they call them, standard NFTs or what have you. But there's a word that they use for it. But the old NFTs use literally 5 different accounts per NFT, and they've built an entire platform that supports that old model, and that's 80% of their business. And not a lot of people have used the core NFT stuff yet. So, I mean, it makes sense that they wouldn't put a whole lot of energy and effort into it yet. It's just that they haven't built it into their creator tools, which I'm sure will come at some point. When I was talking to the support guy, he was like, yeah, we're working on it, blah, blah, blah. He couldn't give me any dates or times, of course, which I understand because you never know when you're developing when you're going to solve the problem. But it just points to the fact that all this shit is complicated. I mean, there's really no easy way to do a lot of it. And aside from sitting down and learning how to code and, writing some of the stuff and testing and, launching stuff using real money. I mean, there's just no easy way to do it. And that's why so few people do it really well. And that's why I'm so obsessed with making sure that what we do really well. So it's just one of those things where it's supply and demand. The supply of NFTs is currently mainly the old stuff, and the demand for the new stuff is just coming online now. And so as that demand grows, I'm sure they'll supply more development manpower to get it knocked out. And I mean, they do support the collections. Obviously, the collections are live online, and they work perfectly on the platform. It's just that the creator tools that you have for the old style of NFTs, account model NFTs, I guess you'd say. I think that's the term I was looking for. The old account model NFTs has been around long enough for them to be perfectly fluent with those, but not perfectly fluent with the core.
Yeah, absolutely. So on top of that, we got artist incubator drops being prepared. We actually even got some artist incubator drops ready already. We still have to agree on a schedule. The RWA drop is going to be the next big thing. We obviously still got token mints on the table. Token mints will be a goal for the next couple of months as well. Obviously, the exploit kind of set us back, but man, talking of all that, it reminds me of how much work lies ahead, actually. But it's cool. I love that we keep moving forward, and I look forward to everything that comes. Yeah, I think we covered it all today, right?
Yeah, we went through quite a few things, no doubt.
Perfect. So let's wrap it up here. We got a good hour of I think it was a pretty cool episode today. So just one more time, thanking everyone who's always with us. I mean, I actually thought about the fact that we are live on Spaces every Friday, and I know for Europeans it's mostly Friday night, Friday evening. For some Americans as well. And we really appreciate you guys because Friday is actually a holy night almost. People go out, have fun, go to dinner, whatever, and they prefer spending it with us. And we definitely appreciate that. And yeah, we look forward to grow. We look forward to find the right people. That's what we are committed to. And we look forward to Friday Spaces. So we'll see if we can get the Planet Amor guys on Spaces. Not sure if it's going to be next Friday or the Friday after, but yeah, we will definitely ask them all the questions. So in case you got questions, drop them in the Discord or in the comments on the Spaces, and we look forward to that. That being said, I hope you guys have a great week, and I see you on Friday. Bye bye.
Take care, guys.